All right, welcome into the Rowdy Studios. Bassmasters and Buzz Cutler over there. Reid Spencer in the middle, NASCAR reporter for Sporting News. And Reid, you were at Charlotte Motor Speedway yesterday at the EFI test, but a lot of the conversation there had to do with the tragic death of Dan Wheldon in Las Vegas. So what were some of your takeaways from yesterday?
Well, almost every bit of conversation was about Dan Wheldon and the tragedy that took place in Las Vegas, and most of the conversation centered around the wisdom of whether IndyCar should be racing on high-banked ovals or not. And the preponderance of opinion, I think expressed most eloquently by Jimmy Johnson, was that the answer is no. That, however, Eddie Gossage, president of Texas Motor Speedway, in some comments that I saw yesterday, said that IndyCar can't survive without them, and that it's got to be an oval-centric series. Road courses and street courses are fine, but ovals are what make American racing, and of course the Indianapolis 500 is the premier oval race of the IndyCar Series. So,
but you can't compare Indianapolis Motor Speedway with Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
Absolutely no comparison.
IndyCar is at Iowa. That seems to be a little bit more manageable and make a little bit more sense than a mile-and-a-half style track. And I would also say, don't you think with these new road races in Austin with the F1 and in Baltimore, that there is movement towards, American racing on these urban streets that could actually mean IndyCar could find a niche there?
Oh, I think they can find a niche there, but I still think...
The question is, how big is the niche that you find?
Exactly.
I mean, what are you really embracing if you move away from the ovals? How big is this series? How much money do you make? I mean, to be perfectly blunt about it.
And one thing that Jimmy said was that even at a place like New Hampshire, which is a 1-mile flat track, he couldn't conceive of the speeds that the Indy cars run there. He could not conceive of going that fast around that racetrack.
Once a car is airborne, doesn't matter the type of car, you can't control it in a crash. And those cars with open wheels, open cockpit, when they get off the ground, and they're shaped like a wing, when they get off the ground, they take flight, and just crazy crashes. I can't imagine racing those on ovals really anywhere.
That's an issue that IndyCar has to address at this point. It also has to address relationships with some of these SMI racetracks, Speedway Motorsports, which they arrived at a very happy agreement a couple of years ago to run at SMI racetracks, and I don't know whether that's going to put that deal or the season finale at Las Vegas in jeopardy, but we'll see how that shakes out. I mean, they're allowing people time to grieve right now, and they're not making those decisions right now, but that's certainly something that I think will be thought about.
And you have to say, when these things happen, there are lessons that are drawn, and people react to them. We saw it in 2001 with Dale Earnhardt in NASCAR, a lot of substantive change. Is there going to be the same kind of thing with IndyCar racing? It seems like fundamentally you have some different issues there. Open cockpits, open wheels, higher speeds, lighter cars. How can the IndyCar League do similar things to what NASCAR was able to do?
Well, I mean, the first step, I think, as far as running on that kind of racetrack is that you would have to slow the cars down significantly, because 225 miles an hour around Las Vegas Motor Speedway to me is insanity. I mean, I told you earlier that I rode around that racetrack at 170 miles an hour with Richard Childress behind the wheel in a stock car at the SEMA show a couple of years ago, and that racetrack, to me, the groove seems narrow enough as you approach the apexes of the corners to conceive of going around there 3 wide, which they don't even do in a stock car.
Right, and 225,
at 225.
when you can't touch each other at all.
Right, exactly.
And your car is shaped like a wing. And
is very light.
And let's be clear that IndyCar could easily reduce the speeds of these cars just by reprogramming the computers that govern the engines.
Yeah, they could.
I mean, it's almost easier than NASCAR putting a restrictor plate in the engine because it's all computer driven.
And they're of course having new engines, new cars next year. So we'll see how that shakes out and what Randy Bernard decides to do with the series, because they really are at a crossroads right now. And I think you cannot have a racing series where it is perceived by the people who are competing in it given the concerns expressed before the Las Vegas race, that this is too dangerous.
Now, were those
Right.
concerns based on speed, or were they concerns more about the size of the field, or both?
Well, field size was an issue, but I think it was more about speed and the type of racetrack that they were racing on, a high bank, 1.5 mile oval, which lends itself to maximum speed. And if you noticed, people were holding the throttles wide open all the way around the track. On Sunday, Danica said, that to me was insane. I backed out. And, I was not comfortable running that way. And,
Right.
and it turned out to be a good move on her part, because when the wreck happened, she got through on the low side. She had moved down to the bottom of the racetrack. And there was a hole for her to find that allowed her to miss the wreck. The people behind her, though, had no way to stop. And, when you're traveling at 1 football field per second,
It's crazy.
Wow.
you can't stop a car.
No, you really can't. I mean, I think the thing is, you have to acknowledge all forms of motorsports are dangerous. You can't make them 100% safe. The question is, how safe do they need to be, and can you get there with the fundamentals that you're dealing with in IndyCar, especially if you continue to race on ovals? I mean, I think that, to me, is still a question.
Oh, I think that's a huge question. And, as long as they race those types of cars, they have a tendency to get airborne. NASCAR looks at that sort of critical liftoff point and tries to keep the cars below that with restrictor plates at Talladega and Daytona. But there's absolutely nothing that IndyCar can do if they're going 225 miles an hour with a winged car that will launch as soon as it hits the back of another one.
Right.
Right.
That's a look at the tragedy at Las Vegas Motor Speedway with Reid Spencer, Buzz Cutler. I'm Bess Masters. We'll see you next time.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.